My name is Jim, and the story I'm about to share is one I've carried with me for years. I died on November 12, 2007. Not in some poetic or metaphorical sense. My heart literally stopped for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. The doctors called it a temporary cessation of cardiac activity, but I call it the moment that changed everything. I didn't share my experience right away. For years I kept it to myself, unsure if anyone would believe me. But as the world began to shift, as the things I saw began to unfold, I realized I had no choice. Someone needed to hear the truth, even if it sounded impossible. That day began like any other. I was clearing leaves off the roof before winter, a task I'd been putting off for weeks. The weather was crisp, the air filled with the earthy smell of wet leaves. I remember the texture of the shingles beneath my boots, the sound of kids playing down the street, and the way the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across my yard. It was an ordinary moment, unremarkable in every way until it wasn't. I slipped. One wrong step on the ladder, and suddenly I was falling. Time seemed to stretch as I plummeted. I remember seeing my house from strange angles, noticing details I'd never paid attention to before. Peeling paint, a bird's nest tucked under the eaves, the way the sunset reflected off the windows. Then came the impact. The doctors later told me the force of the fall was like being hit with a sledgehammer. My skull fractured in 3 places, my leg broke against the ladder, and my tailbone shattered. But it was the blow to my head that stopped my heart. I felt the pain for a split second and then nothing. The pain vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of stillness. I found myself floating above my body, watching the scene below. I saw everything with perfect clarity. The blood pooling beneath my head, the panic on my neighbor's face as he held back my screaming wife, the way my daughter dropped her phone when she saw me lying there. I wanted to tell them I was okay, that the broken body on the ground wasn't me anymore. But I couldn't. As the paramedics arrived, I felt an incredible wave of peace wash over me. There was no fear, no pain, just a sense of pure, perfect peace. Then came the light. It wasn't blinding, but it was brighter than anything I'd ever seen. It was alive, warm, and welcoming. I heard a sound, a chorus of millions of voices singing in harmony. It wasn't in any language I knew, but it resonated deep within me, filling me with joy and love. That's when I saw him, Jesus. Not the soft, gentle figure from Sunday school paintings, but something infinitely more powerful and overwhelming. His presence was like standing next to a sun made of pure love and acceptance. It was both comforting and humbling, like being in the presence of something so far beyond myself that all I could do was fall to my knees. He didn't speak with words, but I understood him perfectly. His voice wasn't something I heard. It was something I felt, like an entire library of knowledge being downloaded into my soul in an instant. He showed me things, not just glimpses or flashes, but vivid, detailed visions of what was to come. The first thing he showed me was the Earth, but it wasn't the Earth I knew. Darkness spread across the planet like a storm, but there were points of light scattered across the globe. These lights, he explained, were the prayers of his people, pushing back the darkness. Even when it seems overwhelming, the prayers of the faithful make a difference, he said. I saw the world change. The first signs began with the water, the rivers running dry, lakes turning to dust, cities becoming uninhabitable. By 2043, the Colorado River was a trickle, and Phoenix was abandoned. Las Vegas shrank to a ghost town, its casinos left to bake under the relentless sun. Miami didn't die in a single storm but was slowly swallowed by the sea. Toxic waters filled its streets, and children swam in the flood despite the dangers, because the upper levels of the city were too hot to bear. But it wasn't just the environment. I saw societies fracture under the weight of scarcity. Food riots erupted as crops failed year after year. Cities became battlegrounds, while others transformed into beacons of hope. In the Great Lakes region, Refugees rebuilt abandoned cities like Detroit, creating vertical farms and new systems of cooperation. Survival required innovation and unity, and those who adapted thrived. Jesus showed me how technology would evolve, not for convenience but for survival. Buildings would become power generators, and water harvesters would be as essential as air conditioners once were. Education would shift to focus on practical skills: farming, engineering, survival. The changes were both heartbreaking and inspiring. The most painful visions were of those who were deceived. I saw people who thought they were faithful, but their hearts were far from Him. "It is not enough to know about me," He said. "They must know me." I saw a wave of deception sweeping the world, small lies growing into overwhelming falsehoods. Yet, in the midst of it, there were those who stood firm, their faith unshakable. He also showed me hope. Communities coming together, families healed, children laughing in restored parklands. It wasn't a return to the world we knew, that world was gone. But it was a new beginning, proof that humanity could adapt, survive, and even thrive. When the visions ended, He looked at me with a love so profound it brought me to tears. "You have work to do," He said. "What you do now matters. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them to choose love, compassion, and truth. The time is short." Then everything went dark, and I woke up in the ambulance. The paramedics said I'd been clinically dead for 3 minutes and 42 seconds. They called my survival miraculous, but they didn't know the half of it. The recovery was brutal: months of physical therapy, migraines, and sleepless nights as I wrestled with what I'd seen. How do you go back to normal after that? How do you carry on knowing what's coming? I tried to warn people, but many dismissed me as crazy. Even my own family struggled to believe. But I can't stay silent. The things I saw are already happening. The storms, the heat, the conflicts, they've begun. But there's still hope. Jesus showed me that humanity survives, that we can adapt and rebuild. Every act of kindness matters. Every choice to protect instead of destroy matters. The future isn't set. It's shaped by the choices we make now. I don't need validation. I don't need people to believe me. I'm sharing this because someone needs to hear it. Time is short, and the choices we make today will ripple into eternity. Choose love. Choose compassion. Choose hope. Because every moment matters, more than we can ever imagine.